Hey y'all, Pham with the Foley Library here. Registration is coming up for a lot of newer students, so we wanted to make a list of tips and tricks on registration based on past student experiences. We hope this video can even help with other experienced students who are still confused with the process too. To start off, we're going to recommend that you take a look at the set of videos already available on MyGU. These videos were done by the registrar's office and act as a resource for students regarding some of the basics of how to actually register. They cover things like creating a plan and actually registering for that plan. They also have incredibly useful things like studying at Gonzaga in Florence and registering for using your CRN codes. We'll go look at those in a little bit. To get to this page on MyGU, you can start off by going to the main web page of Gonzaga University, going to the top right, and clicking on MyGU. Alternatively, you can just type in my.gonzaga.edu, and then you'll be directed to the main page for MyGU. From the MyGU webpage, you can go to Academics on the top left, go down to Registration and Enrollment, go to the Office of the Registrar, then go to Course Registration over here on the right, and lastly, click on Resources for Students. Now you'll have all the tutorials on how to actually register created by the Registrar's Office here on your page. Now let's get into some of the basic tips and tricks that I personally recommend based on my own experiences and some of the experiences of some of my own friends and fellow classmates for registration. The first tip for registration that I'm going to really recommend you do is find the course reference numbers for each of your classes, or at least specifically for the classes that you absolutely need or are prioritizing. The reason that I really recommend getting these CRNs is because they're just a really good option in the case that the plan process doesn't work or is glitching up for some reason. In the case that you're racing to try to get some class that you really need, it can just be really handy to have these CRN numbers so that you can quickly enter them in and be directly put into the class. I'm not saying that putting the CRN will automatically guarantee that you'll be in, but it's just a good backup to have in case that something goes wrong and you still need to somehow enter it in your classes. Just remember that with the CRN or course reference number, you're gonna enter this number for the specific section and time that you're trying to get into. So when if you choose to enter the CRNs, make sure that you have this exact one. The other thing about registration that you should really know is that ZagWeb, the website itself, has its own specific time that it runs on. Meaning, even if your phone says it's 7 o'clock or your computer says it's 7 o'clock, ZagWeb will have its own time that it's running on, which will be pretty close to what you have, but technically, I believe, from my experience, that it'll be a little different from what you have. So what this basically means is that for registration, if you're trying to get in as soon as you can, you might want to delay the time by at least 30 seconds. So let's say you want to get in as soon as possible at 7 a.m. You might want to wait for about 30 seconds as soon as you see it turn 7 o'clock on your phone or computer, and then actually press the continue button. So when you go into the registration for the first time, then you're gonna want to get your term ready and then wait for about 7 minutes and 30 seconds to hit, or even a little after that. Unfortunately, nothing really is perfect with registration, especially through ZagWeb. So even if you time it right, you might run into errors as soon as you hit continue here. So make sure to definitely try to refresh and be patient with ZagWeb as much as you can. The other thing that I'm going to really recommend you do if you can is connect your computer through a wired connection to the router or internet. You can find something that's called an Ethernet cable, which should still be available for free at the Next Gen Tech Bar in Hemmingson. These cables will directly connect you to the internet in the fastest way possible. So basically, while you'll normally connect to your internet based on a Wi-Fi connection, a wired connection will have a more direct connection between you and your internet server, and thus SAGWeb. So basically, it should give you a much faster and more direct connection with registration. However, the problem with this is not everyone has access to wired connections, or your computer might not even have the port for it. But if you do, it's definitely a good idea. If you're living on campus, every dorm room that I know of has their own Ethernet connection ports, and if I remember correctly, they should be an orange little port that you find on the wall. So if you live on campus in a dorm room, I'm going to really recommend that you try to find the Ethernet port, and if your computer allows it, connect your computer by wired connection to the internet. The last tip that I'm going to recommend is a little controversial, but I'm going to recommend that if you aren't connected by wired connection, or the Gonzaga Wi-Fi feels unstable to you, then I'm going to recommend that you try to use alternative Wi-Fi, like at McDonald's or Starbucks, or even your phone's mobile data. The reasoning behind this tip is basically that on registration day, the Gonzaga Wi-Fi might get clogged up with a lot of traffic at that moment from students trying to register all at the same time. So if you use Wi-Fi outside of the university, or even on your phone's mobile data, you might be able to basically dodge the traffic and get through a lot faster. I know I personally had to register for my first registration night through my own phone. I know in the past, before the pandemic, a lot of students would really recommend and try to get a connection as direct as they could to the Gonzaga Wi-Fi. So they'd try to find computers in computer labs, such as in College Hall or the library, which usually would make a lot of sense. But during the pandemic, we obviously don't have access to as many of those computer labs and computers. But also, even if you got access to those computers, it still can be beneficial to just get Wi-Fi outside of the Gonzaga campus and basically dodge the internet traffic from registration day. In fact, the first time I registered, I actually had to register using mobile data off of my phone while getting off the train in Spokane. So basically, if you don't feel confident in your connection to the Gonzaga Wi-Fi, it wouldn't be the craziest idea to try and find Wi-Fi outside of Gonzaga. This might be at a friend's home, or even a Starbucks, or if you're crazy like me, maybe try to use your phone's mobile data. Well, that's all I have. I wish you all luck on your registration. As my friend told me recently, I would really try not to stress too much about it, just because at some point you can't control the entire process itself. At the end of the day, most professors will be out there to help you, and I really hope that you guys are able to get a great registration experience and get the classes that you want. Good luck, y'all. Let's go Zags.